So far in our study of argumentation, we have only studied simple arguments with single lines of reasoning. A line of reasoning is just a focused thread of support for a claim. So any idea that supports a claim, as well as the ideas that support that idea and the examples that support those ideas, that whole thread we call a line of reasoning. A line of reasoning is going to be made up of the claim plus at least one logical premise, and then however many supporting premises and examples that support that one first logical premise. For example, this very simple argument here has just one line of reasoning. Our claim is supported by a single premise. That premise is supported by a couple of examples, but we would call this whole thing, the premise and the two examples, that would be one line of reasoning. Of course, more sophisticated arguments, extended arguments within a lot of the texts we've read, they're going to feature more than just one line of reasoning. You're going to see multiple lines of reasoning where that primary claim is supported by multiple premises, and those multiple premises are themselves supported by more premises and by examples. So the map of an extended argument might look something like this. We've got our central claim here at the bottom, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 different lines of reasoning branching off supporting that claim. I color-coded them just to distinguish them. Our first line of reasoning is a single premise supported by a couple of examples. Our second line of reasoning is a premise supported itself by another premise, which is supported by a couple of examples. And then over here in purple, a premise supported by another premise illustrated by just one example. So there's a lot of different shapes that this can take, but at its heart, we need to understand that a primary claim in an extended argument is usually supported by multiple lines of reasoning. So why are we studying this? Well, on the AP Lang exam, you'll need to be able to do a few things as far as identifying and analyzing argument structure goes. You'll need to be able to identify the different structures of simple and extended arguments. For instance, be able to tell us how many lines of reasoning and what those lines of reasoning are. You'll also need to explain how various sentences and whole paragraphs within a text function within the larger structure of extended arguments. So a question on the multiple choice section might ask you, in paragraph 4, how does it function relative to the argument as a whole, something like that. Lastly, on the Q1 and Q3 essays, you need to be able to write extended arguments in response to given topics that feature clear lines of reasoning. And because it is an essay that you're writing, it needs to be an extended argument, so you will have multiple lines of reasoning that you will need to argue. In order to do all this, in order to be successful either analyzing or writing arguments on the AP Lang exam, you must be able to understand how arguments are structured. Okay, you need to get comfortable with mapping them both physically and kind of briefly in your head. You also need to build the vocabulary necessary to talk about argument structure. So let's look now at some key terms that you need to be able to know in order to talk about argument structure. There are two different ways that a claim can be supported. Either through a premise, which is just a general idea stated as a truth that is used to support the claim, or through an example, which is a specific instance of something used to support a claim. The way that you can tell apart premises from examples is that premises rely on deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is the process of beginning with general ideas and from those following them to specific conclusions. Okay? For instance, in this short argument here, the houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly because of the excellent schools nearby and the convenience to shopping. Because of the excellent schools nearby and the convenience to shopping, those are two separate premises that support the claim that the houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly. We call them premises and not examples because they're not specific instances of something. They are just general statements of truth. And so if these statements are true, then they support our claim. Examples, on the other hand, rely on inductive reasoning, where you have specific instances that lead us to general conclusions about the larger group that you're trying to represent with those specific instances. For example, this is another simple argument. The houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly. A 3-bedroom on Marigold Street sold after just 4 days on the market, and a 4-bedroom over on Wheeler sold after just 36 hours. There, the claim is supported by a couple of different specific examples, specific instances of houses that did sell relatively quickly after being put on the market. So we would call these examples and not premises because they're specific instances and because they are demonstrating specific instances of what the claim is stating. Premises and examples provide two very necessary functions in arguments. Premises are used to argue how or why an idea is true, whereas examples are used to argue simply that an idea is true. Taking a look back at our first sample argument here, the houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly because of the excellent schools nearby and the convenience to shopping. Here, our evidence, the two premises, are giving two reasons why our claim is true. Yeah, why do the houses in this neighborhood sell quickly? Well, because of the excellent schools and because of the convenience to shopping. But looking at our second sample argument here, the houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly. A 3-bedroom on Marigold Street sold after just 4 days. A 4-bedroom on Wheeler sold after 36 hours. Here, our evidence, our couple of examples, are giving two reasons that the claim is true. Yeah, the houses on this neighborhood sell very quickly. For instance, the house on Marigold sold this fast. The house on Wheeler sold this fast. Those are each examples that demonstrate that this claim is true. An effective extended argument will use a combination of both premises and examples. You really can't just rely on one or the other. Your lines of reasoning, however, in an extended argument, those should always be headed by premises. And that's because if they're headed by specific examples, there's no really space, there's no room to go any further than that. You've already gotten as specific as you can, which usually means that you've kind of skipped some logical steps in between. So premises should always support your main or primary claim, and then those premises should be supported by additional premises and examples. If we were to combine the two arguments that we looked at together, it might look something like this. The houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly because there's convenient access to shopping, because there are excellent schools nearby. And then our two examples, I had to come up with a premise that they're supporting because there is recent history of houses in this neighborhood selling very quickly. And then that premise is supported by the two specific examples we've already looked at. If I wanted to flesh out this argument further, I would of course need to provide some specific, maybe some examples of that convenient shopping that's nearby, some examples of the excellent schools that are nearby. That kind of thing would help further flesh out this argument and strengthen it. Finally, just a note about thesis statements and your thesis. The thesis in an extended argument should be a combination of the primary claim that you have at the bottom of an argument map and the premises that lead off each line of reasoning. So for instance, the thesis of that argument that we just looked at would be something like this. The houses in this neighborhood sell very quickly because there is convenient access to shopping and excellent schools, and because there is a recent history of houses selling quickly.